The Atlanta Falcons are finally starting to breed some competition.
This is the Atlanta Sports Party, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Sports Party, your home for the best Atlanta sports talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Maria Martin. The Atlanta Sports Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So guys, Kirko is not here for your perceptions because he's all about reality. And don't look now, but one of our teams might be rounding into form. But first, the pads are on in Flowery Branch, and we are here for it. So, Jarvis, after getting a chance to get our eyes on this Falcons team for the first 2 weeks of training camp, and now this week they are in full pads, I know that excites everybody. Does it look like for you a team in the Falcons that's ready to compete right now on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, absolutely, and specifically on a defensive line, right? There's not the thing about it is with me, I don't necessarily see that one or two guys that you know for a fact are going to be able to get to the quarterback on a consistent basis, right? From that edge spot. But what I do see is a lot of competition. These dudes are going to be fighting and scratching for reps. And that's what you're talking about, Terry Fontenot, when he constructed his roster. You know, you talking about breeding competition and guys going out there and saying, you know what? I don't know how long I'm going to be out here, but when I'm out here, I got to make sure I'm effective and I'm being productive, because if I'm not, I got somebody waiting in the wings that's ready and willing to roll. And the variance of it too, right? Because you got veteran guys and David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett, but you also got guys like Ruka RaRa, who's been out there doing this thing. You got Zach Harrison, who came on towards the end of last year. So there's just a variance of guys that are out there trying to establish themselves and go out there and earn some reps and be able to put up some numbers. So I feel like the way Terry Fontenot has built this squad, and I think that depth piece is really cool to watch because we aren't used to that, and just to be quite honest, in the past few years.
Yeah. And you think about players whose names we haven't spoken quite yet, who we're waiting to kind of see what plays out with them up front, whether that's a Kentavious Street, who had some moments last year. And of course, the injury kind of took him down in that Bucks game, a LaCale London, or even seeing like what a Brandon Dorlus is able to do. And I'm just speaking this on depth because Lord knows every season, it seems like, Maria, the last couple of seasons, it's been, is Eddie Goldman going to play? Is Eddie Goldman not going to play? But if Eddie Goldman does indeed play, it could potentially, to Jarvis's point, just give you that depth up front. So yeah, kind of liking what we're seeing, if nothing else, in the competition that's being bred by having that depth up front. But for you, either side, both sides of the ball, what have you seen these first couple of weeks of this season that says, you know what, this really is a team that's ready to compete now?
You know, this is very typical of training camp for each side of the ball to have their turn or have their day. And every time I'm out there, sometimes I feel like the offense is 2 steps ahead or the defense is 2 steps ahead. And that just goes to show that install is going great, that competition is heating up, and that there are different things being displayed each and every day of training camp. So one of the things of training camp that I think a lot of people do is they overreact and they underreact to things. And so I want to just kind of be somewhat in the middle, which is rare for me. Usually I'm pretty opinionated on things. But I think for the Falcons, their biggest issue, and I'm pretty sure all of us could agree on this, is there were going to have some trouble finding a pass rush, I think, with this defense in the way that it is. So how do you get creative and maybe create those opportunities? I think that's really what they're looking for right now. And Jimmy Lake talked about it. He likes versatile players, guys who can do a bunch of different things. And especially on the defensive line, you know who Grady Jarrett is, you know who David Onyemata is, but there's a lot of question marks on each level of this defense. And so for me, that's the side of the ball that I've kind of paid attention to a little bit more. The offense, you really know what Kirk's going to give you. You know that I actually think he's going to make everyone around him better. I think we've seen signs of that so far. And so I tend to pay attention more to the defense because there are question marks on that side of the ball. And there are guys, Braylon Trice, who I want to see get in there and who I want to see on full display. And I think the
speak my language, Maria.
Yes. And I think that the preseason is a really good opportunity for that. We're going to get to see a ton of those guys in Miami. They start joint practices next week, and then they've got their game. That's going to be the first taste of eyeing to cut this roster down, which Terry Fontenot pointed. It's going to be really tough to cut this roster down because there is a lot of competition, but there's not a spot for everybody. And so I really think that it's been going good so far. I've been pleased with what I've seen.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point about them having the opportunity to go up against a different team, if you will, joint practices, and then, of course, the preseason game, because you'll get an opportunity, especially against a Tua Tagovailoa and a nice little wide receiving core that he has in Tyreek Hill and Jaden Waddle. And with us having some questions still at the corner position, like who's going to really be the complement to A.J. Terrell, who's going to play that nickel, that team is going to give you an opportunity to really see what we're made of, because even if those guys aren't out there for a lot of reps, they're going to be out there for some reps. So you'll get to really see some good on good when the Falcons get to Miami. Now, RaRa Thomas was initially suspended indefinitely following his arrest last Friday on 2 counts of misdemeanor battery and 1 count of felony second-degree cruelty to children. Jarvis, on our Atlanta football party, the Dogs edition, back on Tuesday, we questioned Kirby Smart's decision to suspend versus dismiss RaRa from that Georgia program. But now we have confirmation that RaRa has indeed been dismissed. Was that ultimately the right decision? And why do you think Kirby has now made this call?
Oh, first of all, to answer your question, yes, it was absolutely the right decision. I thought he probably should have done it like right then and there to kind of send a message and let everyone know, like, hey, man, these multiple infractions, you got to go, because we don't have time, and when we have the depth to be able to replace you. Because I think that one thing when you talk about college football players, and I've been one myself, and when you're 18 and 22, you feel like you're invincible. You feel like you can beat up the world. And a lot of times you need moments like these. They're teaching moments, sure, but when you come into find yourself in these situations multiple times, you have to understand that, hey, man, you can be replaced. And I think that Kirby Smart sent a clear message. And as far as making a decision now and why he did it, I feel like he got a little bit more information. He got a little bit more confirmation that, hey, this dude probably did this stuff. And when we talked about pre-child diversions in that first instance that he had, they don't give those out. They only give those out once, you know, and because I'm very familiar with those being with those situations, right? So when you think about it from that standpoint, I feel like Kirby got a little bit more information, got a little bit more confirmation as far as like what actually happened, and he made a decision right away. And I think that shout out to Kirby for doing the right thing.
Yeah, Maria, I look at it, and one of the things we talked about Tuesday was the fact that Kirby is going to be measured in his decision-making. He is ultimately going to be fair about it. We know that he's a guy who believes in redemption. So if there's an opportunity to give someone a second chance, he's going to give that person a second chance. However, he's also going to look at the tea leaves. He's going to read them to see exactly where he should go. And I personally think it was okay. Like, I was a little surprised that he didn't dismiss right away. But on the same token, I said, if it's Kirby Smart making the decision not to dismiss immediately, there must be a reason. He wants to see a little bit more. Well, in these last 24 to 72 hours, obviously there's been something that's been shown, a pattern that he does not like, that says, hey, it is just time to go. And I think also he moved swiftly enough to make the decision to pivot, number one. And number two, that decision, I think, is important for sending a message to the rest of that squad.
And I think this decision on RaRa was coming for longer than it's public and that we're privy to. And one of the things about Kirby is we already know his relationship with Nick Saban, and Nick Saban talks at length about many times in his career where he had to make a choice, whether to make an example out of a child or to give him a second opportunity. And those are very difficult decisions for coaches to make. And, I don't want to say that lightly. I want people to really understand that it's not like it's just this flip of a switch, easy decision when it comes to kids you care about, kids you coach, and people make mistakes. The issue is, though, these mistakes are repetitive. And at some point, there has to be disciplinary action. There has to be not even just for football, just for your life, for a life lesson. And I think Kirby cares about that as well. It's not just the football aspect, like, hey, this is an issue for the team. It's also, this is an opportunity for you to turn your life around. I'm doing you a favor by letting you go. And I think that that's also very important. You know, RaRa Thomas had some things to work out on his own. It's just not going to be in Athens with the University of Georgia football team. And that's unfortunate, but those were choices that he made on his own. And I think it's good for Kirby to send a message at this point. There's been a lot of criticism about the way that he's handled his team and the way that these issues have come about and he hasn't addressed them. Well, here it is. And he's telling you that this is not tolerated on my team. I believe in second chances, but I don't believe in repetitive action. And he clearly made a statement by letting go of who I think is an incredibly talented kid.
Indeed, indeed. And this was something, like you said, that's followed him from his days at Mississippi State and now here into Athens. The chances were given. Unfortunately, there is a pattern, and Kirby had to respect that and to make the right decision for not just this program, but to your point, to RaRa Thomas, because at some point you have to be held accountable for your actions so that you won't keep repeating those and you have to move on. So now Kirk Cousins isn't here for your perceptions, by the way, because a lot of people have some commentary about him, but he's all about the reality, and we're going to download on it in the deep dive. This episode of our Atlanta Sports Party is brought to you by Gametime. Now, Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Now, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And how cool is this? We know that sometimes there are situations where, hey, you think that you have the best seat, and maybe you do, but then maybe there is a price that is better that you find out there. Guess what? Gametime has the lowest price guarantee. They will credit you 110% of the difference if you so happen to find a ticket that's a little bit cheaper. So your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You know the Braves are trending up. So if you want to go get last minute tickets as they get set to come home to face the Marlins, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So guys, I always love when Kirk Cousins has something to say about anything because I think he's just so animated. One thing about him, even in his animated way of kind of speaking out and sometimes being lighthearted, he's still going to keep it real and he's going to be who he is. Maria, he talked about perception versus reality post-practice Wednesday and essentially said he doesn't really care about how you perceive him. So what are some of the things that you feel when you look at him? Really, it's more of a reality of what we see him say, but also how we've seen him perform so far in these first couple of weeks of camp, especially seeing what, in my opinion, is a much faster progression on offense this season versus the last couple.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of perceptions around the Falcons right now, specifically Kirk and the offense. First of all, a lot of people who are fans of the Falcons really think that this offense could be something explosive. It could be something very special. Now, there are outside perceptions that Kirk is not that healthy, that Kirk doesn't look that great in training camp. I've heard that. Well, I've watched this quarterback multiple times throughout training camp, and I would vehemently disagree with that. I think he looks good. I think some of these like limping moves that people are talking about, that's just a part of your Achilles healing. I mean, he's fine. He feels physical. He feels fast. He even said he took off on a 2-minute drill the other day, and he's never seen an opposing sideline, which would be his defensive teammates in this case, cheer as loud as they did in that moment. So, you know, Kirk, I think, for me, perception of Kirk is my reality. My perception of him heading into him being a Falcon was that he would be a leader, was that he would be good on offense, was that he would be consistent. He's been all those things. And for me, he's elevating everyone around him. And that's my biggest thing with Kirk. And he's always going to tell you the truth. I know he doesn't care about what people think, which is a good thing. He shouldn't have to. He's played in the NFL for forever now. He's in his 13th season. But for me, I think my perception and reality are one and the same. I am on the same page of that too. And I think that everyone's perception of this offense being explosive, or Kyle having his best year, or Drake unlocking another level in year 3, all of those things are going to become a reality because Kirk Cousins is there. So whether he cares or not, I think that people do.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you said leadership, because when I think about the progression, Jarvis, of this offense, I actually think about the progression of this team overall. I see in him a leader. And again, not to kind of knock Desmond Ridder, for lack of a better term, but I felt like, yes, Des did have some command of the offense. I felt like, yes, he was the leader of the offense, but I can't tell you that I felt like he was the leader of the team the way maybe I felt that when Matt Ryan was here, even though the team had Grady Jarrett at that time. And obviously he's the heart and soul of the defense, but I think there's a difference. There's a marked difference when Kirk Cousins steps into the building, when he steps on the field. I feel like he commands the entirety of the roster. And I think that we're starting to see every player understand, whether you are on this side of the 11-on-11 or this side of the 11-on-11 or 7-on-7, he is expecting everybody to bring their A game every single time. So that was my perception of what he was going to be before he got here. But now it's like we're starting to see the reality of it, because to his point, a defense isn't cheering if you're not doing something that's awe-inspiring for them. And now they're out there saying, oh, okay, well, you put it out there. You put your A game out there. Well, we're about to bring our A game too. So I feel like that might be my perception kind of meeting the reality. But I love that he doesn't give a darn about what anybody thinks. He's just going to be out there doing him.
You know what, T, and to be honest with you, T, like that was like my big question for this team. I know pass rush has been an issue for quite some time, but that was my big question coming into this season. Okay, I know that, you know, the recovery time for Kirk Cousins was X amount of time, and then now you have it now where he's out there taking snaps and he's out there, you know, doing what he's supposed to do as a quarterback, going through the progressions and everything. And but for me to be able to go out there and get my eyes on it, that's what changes my perception into reality, right? So when there was one particular play where they were in the red zone, they went play action, and you know, nobody was really open, so he kind of rolled out and kind of made a throw on the run. I was like, okay, those are some of the things that I know that builds that confidence to say, hey, I can do this. I know that I'm fully healthy, and be able to go out there, because that's what's going to help that mental, you know, aspect of it. Because as of right now, he's not going to play in preseason, so it's going to have to be something to continue to build up that confidence, because when Pittsburgh comes in, they're not going to be looking for any, like, those are the people that's not going to be cheering for him. I promise you that, you know, so they're going to be trying to look into, you know, to get some action and get it done. But I think overall, Kirk is in a good place. And I feel like the reality of it, that he's looking and putting on the field that he's healthy, because, you know, you can say what you want to say, but people can get out there and get their eyes on you and say, you know what? He does look healthy. He does look like he's moving around well. So, and obviously it's going to be some, from a rehabilitation standpoint, he's going to have to make sure he continues to do that, but you don't have to worry about that with Kirk. So yeah, I think overall, like that perception is a reality for me, because I've been able to kind of see him go out there and do those things. Now, all we got to see now is what you're going to do when those bodies start flying around those legs. And that's going to be the big question. But I feel like he's stacking those days up and building up that confidence to, you know, September 8th.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, one thing with Kirk is, I think what he was trying to get across is that he wants to turn these perceptions into reality. He doesn't want to just talk about how this offense could be great. He wants to go out and show you that. That was really what he was trying to tell everybody. And also what I've learned about Kirk in training camp is he can't keep a secret. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah. Got diarrhea to mouth.
You said preseason, and I was like, the only reason we know Kirk is not playing in preseason is because he gets up there and he's like, you know, if it were up to me, I would love to play preseason, but it fell on deaf ears. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? Mr. He literally told me no.
Yeah.
Right.
Backing me up.
I
Don't tell him any secrets.
Tell it all. Tell it, Kirko.
Don't tell it all, because unfortunately we know that's how the Falcons lost a couple picks. But
seriously, no, it's refreshing. It's really refreshing to be around.
He is who he is. And that just means we're going to get straight no chases, which, like you said, it's refreshing and definitely something that we can appreciate. Now, I think another thing that is positive for these Falcons to have Kirk Cousins in place is the fact that you have first-time coordinators in Zach Robinson, and of course, Jimmy Lake is first-time coordinator as well on the defensive side of the ball. But it's always good to have that veteran to kind of partner with that sort of newbie in that coordinator space. That said, Maria, Raheem Morris has those two coordinators that have, we'll say, more limited experience with play calling and being officially responsible for play calling in the league. So how important is it for them to at least have worked together in LA? And are you starting to see some of those synergies from their previous experience working together start to pay off on either or both sides of the ball?
I mean, that part is really hard to tell on August 1st for sure. But I will say, I think it's a huge benefit that they were previously coworkers. I mean, that just, it helps. It helps to understand some of the verbiage because, again, everyone, everywhere you go, calls things differently. Things look differently on offense and on defense. So it's just the verbiage aspect that I think is the biggest learning curve and just how they want to call plays. This is relatively new, as you mentioned, T. They've never been coordinators in the NFL. That is a big learning curve for a lot of people. But to Raheem's credit, though, he has put so many people around both of those guys to where you really shouldn't feel that nervous. I mean, the amount of experience on that coaching staff is immeasurable. And I think he did that because he has first-time coordinators. It was incredibly smart. And especially when you're talking about a quarterback, you get a veteran quarterback, so you don't have to worry about him as much. But then it goes to the offense, and you have a ton of other previous NFL quarterbacks sprinkled in there who can also talk to these receivers, these running backs, and be able to tell them. And Dwayne Lefford just being there again is so valuable for the offensive line. I know I'm talking Jarvis's language now, but seriously, I mean, the amount of experience on this coaching staff, I think, should make everyone feel pretty good about where they are heading into the season. I know first-time coordinators are a little nerve-wracking, but I'm not that nervous just because of everyone else around them.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical component as well. Like, you always think to yourself, okay, how's this going to work out as far as coaches that are retained from, the previous administration? And you give a great example in Dwayne Ledford. I think there are, him being maybe the primary example, having him back, or TJ Yates, having those guys in place that some of these offensive players and players on the defensive side of the ball as well have familiarity with, have some cohesion or cohesiveness with. I think that's going to be huge for them. And so it kind of takes away some of what might happen in your first year, kind of when you're a newbie in that role. I think it kind of takes away some of the, I don't want to say the jitters, but maybe some of the rookie mistakes, for lack of a better term, that you might make as a first year coordinator.
And you know what, T? I asked Zach Robinson about that, directly, because when you step into a different role, this is different between sitting on the side, not sitting on the sidelines, but like being on that coaching staff and working with the offensive coordinator and being that guy to help come up with game plans versus, hey, I got my quarterback coach who's helping me come up with game plans so I can start calling plays. And Zach was very open about how Sean McVay helped him, put him in situations to where he was actually play caller, specifically in the preseason. So he was prepared for it, and just like Raheem Morris surrounded, kept Jerry Gray on. We know how huge he is, as far as Maria as well. So how he's just been that voice, veteran voice that players just automatically respect once he walks into the room. And Jesse Bates even spoke to it when he first signed with his team. So when you think about it from that aspect of it, like having that experience and working with guys, and Raheem Morris seeing how Sean McVay entrusted, Zach Robinson with doing certain things. And he was like, okay, you know what? Hey, man, once I get this opportunity to go get this head coaching job, because I know I'm going to get another chance, I want to bring you along with me. So that's the cool aspect about it. So it's not so much pressure if he hadn't worked with them, or they're having that distrust, if, like, I know I like you as a play caller, I like your potential, but it's going to be kind of hit or miss when balls start flying. You don't really have that because you actually worked with him before, and you kind of understand that he's been in those situations where he was actually calling plays, and you like what you saw then. So, hey, I know that he can do it now.
Speaking of second chances, it looks like in maybe this last, say, 5-game stretch, there's a team we might want to give a second chance to, because don't look now, but they might be rounding back into form. We'll talk about it in Around the Metro. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the noise. Locked On Sports also brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, of course, guys, you know I'm talking about the Braves. It's really been an up and down season if you are a Braves fan, if you have covered the Braves and all points in between, because there were moments where we thought to ourselves, you know what? The Braves should probably just wave the white flag. Don't try to do anything at the trade deadline. Alex Anthopoulos will just try this thing again next year. And all of a sudden, Jarvis, Maria, they have just literally found new life. 4 wins in the last 5 games, including a win over the Milwaukee Brewers, a 6-2 win that actually gave them that series as well. And now, not only do they find themselves winners of 4 of their last 5 games, but don't look now, because they are just 6.5 games behind the Phillies for the NL East division lead. And we've been talking ad nauseum about the fact that, oh my God, be careful, because the New York Mets are right there on your heels with the same record, but of course, Braves with the tiebreaker, and of course, with the San Diego Padres, a game back in the wild card hunt. I cannot believe we're actually having a conversation about these Braves being potentially back in the conversation about the division. But what really intrigues me, Jarvis, is the fact that this was a game win yesterday. It saw back-to-back with Travis d'Arnaud and Matt Olson, also names that we have not talked about in a positive light in a minute. Maybe they are turning the corner after all.
Yeah, because I was actually watching it live. I was like, man, what in the world is going on? They were going went to back-to-back earlier, then they went back-to-back again. And that's what turns hope that they're going to get it right into faith and belief that it's going to happen, because you have that precedent that they set. And when we're talking about, Matt Olson, 4 home runs in the last 5 games, when you think about him potentially turning the corner, your guy that's been in that cleanup spot, because Lord knows Snit has been holding it down and riding his behind up in that doggone 4th slot, even when he's been struggling so much. And if we find ourselves him getting to a point where he's that guy that gave us 54 home runs and 139 RBI last year, and as one of the far as the best Braves to be able to do that, for this organization. And when you think about it from that aspect, if this dude starts to get on a heater, that's when and you understand and can firmly believe, because the pitching staff has been great. Bullpen has been amazing, right? And you just added Jorge Soler, who's going to hopefully sew up that leadoff spot for you. And when you have those type of situations all coming together, that's when you have a recipe for success. And the Phillies and the Mets, they better, specifically the Mets, y'all better stop hoping, because y'all going to be in real trouble if Matt Olson starts to get things going, which he's already started, right?
Who was it on this podcast? What was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? And I said that the Braves would do something special in the second half of the year. Did I not?
Yes.
Maria.
Okay, look, I'm not saying that they're doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not saying that they're doing that right this second. Okay, like, everybody chill out. It's only been 2 games where they're on a winning streak. But the thing that's very encouraging to me is, first of all, the Phillies, who are a very good baseball team, hitting their not so good stride at the same time that the Braves seem to be putting some stuff together. And I know there were a lot of frustrations about the trade deadline and lack of moves from Alex Anthopoulos, other people's words, not mine. And one of the things he said is, we have a very good baseball team. And so I'm just looking for a couple of pieces that make sense, that aren't going to cost them a ton of money, which he tried, but things didn't make sense with market value and all of that stuff. Like, that factors in more than people understand.
Sure.
Jorge Soler, they've wanted him since 2022, Alex Anthopoulos admitted. They've been after this guy for a very long time. He hits leadoff and can hit leadoff very well. Now, granted, Jared Kelenic, who's been filling in at the leadoff spot, had a terrible month, and then all of a sudden, when they went on the road this last series, turned the corner. So for me, I just want the Braves to start stringing these little pieces of things together. That's when I'm going to have a little bit more belief, because we've talked about this ad nauseum all season long, guys. The Braves have shown us a little bit of good, and then all of a sudden it's bad again. We need consistent good, like the pitching staff has done, because even Chris Sale the other night, got into some trouble, but still did not allow over 2 runs for his 9th straight start. That's the kind of stuff that you want to continue to string together. And one thing about Matt Olson that's very encouraging, when he's hitting opposite field home runs, that's when I feel like power is starting to come back for Matt, because that's a clear indicator that things are making sense at the plate. Let's just string it together for real this time, because I went out here, put myself on a limb now twice, and said that the Braves are going to do something special in the second half of the season. I'm not saying they're going to win the division, okay? Everyone relax. I don't know that that can be obtainable. However, they're as close as they've ever been. They have a chance now to put some stuff together. They got another nice little bullpen piece with Luke Jackson. Let's do this thing. Let's make it feel like 2021 when nobody believed in the Braves, and let's turn up the heat and let's get some stuff going in late baseball.
Yeah,
Also,
and this is go ahead.
I was just gonna say also to kind of add to piggyback off what you were saying. Speaking of stringing things together, you talking about Max Fried coming back, Ronaldo Lopez. Everything looks good for him, and those guys need to potentially getting a start this weekend.
You may get Michael eventually. You'll get Ozzie in September, which I don't really know that does much for you, but still.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah. But I think those are great points, because if we take this back 5.5 days ago, there was a collective gasp when it came to Ronaldo Lopez, like, oh my God, like, and then to get the word earlier in the week that, hey, he's good. Like the MRI results came back clean. That was a very encouraging sign. Like, okay, that probably took a lot of heat off of Alex Anthopoulos and what he would have to do to maybe kind of overreach, because unfortunately it wasn't just a Braves thing. This was across Major League Baseball. This was a seller's market. So the supply was just the demand was just way higher than the supply. So I think he just had to do what he had to do, which was the right thing that he did. Now that's part one. Part two is you get Max Fried in a situation where he's able to have another not sim, but yesterday he was able to throw again, and it looked good. And Alex Anthopoulos was encouraged. I also say the same. I heard him on 92.9 yesterday, just talking about the fact that Michael Harris II is just a little bit ahead of schedule. Like he's really looking good to come back in early August. And everyone had said, hey, Ozzie done for the season. Don't know if you're going to get him back in the regular season, but there's an outside chance you might. Like you said, Maria, don't know that that's going to make a world of difference, but it could. And then finally, I like the fact that, and this isn't less about the Braves and more about the competition. The Phillies dropped 4 straight games, but they dropped those games with the likes of Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper being back in the lineup. So I think that's something to kind of watch. Like you said, not overreaching and saying that the Braves are going to win the division, but if nothing else, these types of little nuances actually put you at least in position to be able to host that wild card. Should it come down to that, you'll be able to host the wild card series, and that's something to look forward to as well.
Yeah, look, it's been super unfortunate for the Braves that injuries have played a major role in their season, and there's never excuses. And to be fair, there's still a very good baseball team. That's indicative of the depth that they have for sure. But even look at Whit Merrifield. He comes over to the Braves. This guy was one of the healthiest players in all of Major League Baseball. Always played baseball, like consistently over the last 3 years. He pretty much never missed a game. And then he goes to the Braves and takes a ball off of his throwing hand. MVP, like, what are we doing? It is just, when I heard that, I said, he what? He did what? He has to have stitches? Like, this poor guy, he comes to the Braves, and I don't know what kind of hex is put over the Braves right now, but I feel like it's starting to go away, like maybe just a little bit, because there are encouraging signs. You make a really good point about the Phillies too, because some of the most powerful people in their lineup back, and that's when they're losing. That's a good sign.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Braves country, just stay in your prayer closet. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Sports Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Hawks for your second listen, and be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you on the Atlanta Football Party Monday.